Date, I made a joke during stand-up that offended my girlfriend's sister, and now my girlfriend won't talk to me. Just a little clarification on my last post. At the show I didn't use any personal information while stopping my girlfriend's sister from heckling. I just used what was visible. I didn't even mention that I knew her. I also should have mentioned that this show I was doing was a big deal for me. This venue I was at is the kind of place you perform at and then shortly afterwards start receiving calls to do televised comedy specials. If I went overboard with the comments, it's because if I lost the crowd in this show, that could have been really bad for my career. That's not to excuse what I said or how I said it, just some background. So, a lot has happened since my last post about the aftermath of my girlfriend's sister visiting my comedy show. On Monday, I was returning back to my apartment after doing a spot for a radio station. As I walked back in, I saw that my girlfriend's dad was there and waiting to talk with me. He had stopped by to say hello to my girlfriend, but apparently his real reason for stopping by was to talk to me. He's normally a pretty even-keeled guy, but he was definitely miffed that day. Basically, he wanted to talk with me about what went down at the comedy club the previous week. We sat down in the dining room and I could tell this discussion would be a long one. My girlfriend's sister told him about the show, and he was justifiably upset that I called his daughter a cunt. I stayed cool and just told him that I wasn't saying it to intentionally hurt his daughter's feelings. I was simply trying to get back control of my show and the audience. He kept on about how awful that was and it sounded like he didn't get the whole story from his daughter. I asked him if I could give my side of the story just so he had some frame of reference, to which he let me. I told him about her interrupting and heckling numerous times after my initial concerns. I said that I had gotten carried away with my choice of words, but I had to do that in order to keep the crowd. I didn't pose this as an excuse, just where I was coming from. He wasn't as upset, but he still was angry. He started hounding me about my line of work and what kind of job makes you call people that. Now, I think this line of questions stemmed from some deep negative feelings about my career as a comic. We ventured onto that topic fairly soon. I told him that I get it. It's not the most traditional or stable job. My girlfriend went to a very prestigious university and her friends are getting married to doctors, lawyers, and executives and having lovely families. There is nothing wrong with those people, their professions, or their way of life, but that's just not me. It seemed that my girlfriend's father thought that I just performed some stand-up every now and then and just farted around all day. I told him about what I really do and how I prepare. I spend a lot of time writing for some small magazines and newspapers, I do comedy spots at radio stations, and I do comedy and improv lessons. If I'm not doing that, I'm writing my own stuff or a myriad of other performance-related tasks. After this he seemed to back off a whole bunch, but he still was pretty upset about the cunt comment. I explained that the remark was definitely heavy-handed, but it would not have been said if there was no heckling. I also explained that I would be getting in contact with the sister soon to talk about the events of that evening. He seemed to like that course of action and left shortly afterwards. I still don't think my girlfriend's dad thinks super highly of my career, but I feel like that was the best face-to-face conversation we've had and he at least now knows that I work hard and am passionate about my career. He also wasn't completely pacified, but that's alright, I can work on that after all this stuff. After this, my girlfriend and I got a chance to talk about the evening at the comedy club. I said that I'm sorry for going so nuclear on her sister. She said that she wasn't mad about this or even the use of the word cunt, but the negative comments I made about her sister being a rich girl. She wanted to know if I felt the same way about her. I told her that while I do seem to have an inferiority complex when it comes to people from wealthy backgrounds, I view her as the woman that I love, not Cruella de Vil. I also apologized if my comments made her feel undervalued. That was not my intent. She asked me some more specifics about my upbringing and I told her a little more in detail. She asked me if I thought about counseling to work through some of these issues and I said that I'd be down for that. Let's face it, a comedian is only as good as shrink. I'm scheduled for a few appointments in the upcoming weeks. If I can get the counselor to laugh, that's a win for me. She apologized for not getting her sister to be quiet during the set. She said the whole thing seemed like a nightmare and she kinda froze up when her sister started yelling. I told her that I accepted her apology and offered to meet with her sister soon to go over the events of the evening. She seemed happy about that and this weekend we'll both be meeting her sister over lunch. So far, it seems like a lot of these issues are slowly but surely getting resolved through some solid communication. Now we'll just see how the meeting with the sister goes. I'll be sure to keep everyone updated. Final update, sorry about taking forever to reply, I got crazy busy over these last couple of months. When I last left off, I was set to meet up with my girlfriend's sister, which we did. So, my girlfriend and I met up in the parking lot of this restaurant. I had just finished a writing session at a magazine office and she had just finished with work. We make our way to the restaurant and sit down. The sister is already there and waiting. We sit down and attempt to start some small talk, but she's noticeably upset. As we're looking through the menu, her father comes into the restaurant and sits down at our table. This caught me way off guard. We sit awkwardly for about 5 minutes until I eventually say, alright, let's get this out on the table. Look, sister, the other night I called you a name that was pretty harsh. I'm sorry that your feelings got hurt, but you heckled me during my set. That is extremely rude. It would be like if I came to your job and started throwing around your materials while you were working. I was gonna go on and ask for an apology until my girlfriend's dad piped up and said to me, are you not gonna even apologize? I looked at my girlfriend who was kinda shying away from the whole scene and looked back at him and said, no, I'm not. This was a huge opportunity for me and if she would have thrown me off my game, it could have seriously messed up my career. The sister began to talk about how embarrassed I made her in front of her friends and how the C word was so offensive. At this point, my girlfriend also said, yeah, you didn't have to be that rude, to me. I was flabbergasted. I thought she was going to back me up on this. I thought we had agreed on how shitty her sister's behavior was. For the next 10 minutes or so, I was somewhat speechless, which for me is a rarity, as they told me how out of line I was. My girlfriend wasn't super vocal, but she still jumped in occasionally. It got to a point where I eventually said, "This is ridiculous. I didn't come here to be lectured. I'm leaving." I left the restaurant and drove home. My girlfriend called me from and tried to get me to come back. I replied, "There's no way I'm going back to that lion's den. I want to talk about this when you get back home." About an hour later, she arrives at the apartment. I ask her, "What the hell was that?" She went on telling me how when she talked to her sister and parents and realized that what I said was really mean and I should have been more apologetic. I thought there was an understanding all around, but I was way wrong. We'd never had any big-time disagreements or discussions, but that night, we had it out. I guess she was beginning to feel some pretty big resentment about my career. She had just gotten a promotion recently and she said she lied to her coworkers about my job to not feel embarrassed. This blew me away. I asked her straight up, "Do I embarrass you?" She said, "Yes." At this point, I grabbed my things and left for a friend's house. I was too upset to stay the evening. I went back 2 days later and for the next week or so, we barely talked. Then one evening, she asked to talk to me. She said, "Look, I think I've came to the realization that we are two wildly different people and I don't think we can reconcile that. I think it'd be best if we broke up." My first thought was to say no, but as I began to think about it more, she was right. I wasn't exactly what she was looking for and I don't want to be with someone that feels embarrassed around me. I spent the next 2 weeks looking for a place and moved out. The whole thing went down really civilly. She gave me time to get my things in order. I am not mad at her, she has every right to not date me. I hope she's not mad at me, but if she is, oh well. Obviously dating someone is fun, but being single is also nice because I can focus more on my writing and career, which I think is really starting to take off. So in a way, it's not a happy ending, but it is a happy ending.